You're listening to a Roddenberry Podcast.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. And now for a brand new show we hope you'll like. Gene-ology, a Roddenberry Podcast.
Episode 80, Warrior, the Story of Sam Houston. Welcome to Mission Log Gene-ology. I'm Earl Green.
And I'm Ashley Thomas.
This podcast's whole mission is to look back through Gene Roddenberry's early TV writings to see if he was sneaking moralistic messages to his audience through his storytelling. And we've been trying to do things in roughly chronological order.
But as the old saying goes, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy, and new things have come to light since the show started. Stuff that we already covered in script form or new discoveries altogether.
Today's show is a little bit of both. Back in episodes 27, 28, and 29 of Gene-ology, Norman and I covered Gene's first serious series pitch for a show that on paper was called The Man from Texas, based on the real-life exploits of Sam Houston. And at the time, we had no evidence that it ever made it past the script stage. But in one of the most delightful surprises of this whole process, we now have to admit we were wrong. The Man from Texas was filmed, and we've seen it. So it's time to double back and renew our acquaintance with Sam Houston.
Now, before we get to trivia on this week's episode, let me take a brief moment to encourage you to join our Patreon or follow us on YouTube or leave a review wherever you're listening to us. Or, hey, we ain't going to be mad if you do all of the above. Patreon is your gateway to all things Mission Log, including exclusive access to the unedited version of our show, aka the VAM, and our private Discord server where you can interact with us, your hosts, Earl and me, during scheduled live chats, along with occasional screenings. And hey, it's not just us. If you listen to Mission Log Live, Mission Log Prodigy, Mission Log the Orville, we're all there. Hang out with us. You can get all of this for just $1 a month. And hey, we ain't going to be mad if you want to do more. So head over to patreon.com/missionlog to see what tier works for you and join the conversation. By the way, folks, reviews really do help our shows more than you could possibly imagine. Even if you can't come up with the words for a written review, a 5-star rating really does go a long way to tell the algorithm that you like us, you love us, you want some more of us, and you think other people might like, love, and want some more of us too. We are counting on our loyal genealogists to help us spread the word. And now, this week's trivia. Earl, we have a good bit of trivia to share with the good people today, so let's go for it, bro.
Yeah, and so much trivia, in fact, Ashley, we had to tag team this one. So
Tap me in.
Yeah, we both wrote it. You're going to hear both of us. It's nuts because, wow, what a story behind this. History is like a lot of other sciences. You can form a hypothesis based on the available information and find out that it's wrong. At that point, you either take on new information and make sure everyone else knows that information, or you could continue to be wrong for all the good that'll do you. So, probably not for the first time on Gene-ology, probably not the last either. Hey, we got it wrong. The script Destiny and the Raven, the pilot script for Gene's first Screen Gem series pitch, working titled The Man from Texas, was committed to film in 1958 under the title Warrior, the Story of Sam Houston, which was one of the alternate titles Gene listed in his exhaustively researched series proposal. As for how this revelation happened, just a few months ago, earlier in 2025, the entire pilot, plus a pitch reel at the end, was posted on the YouTube channel Sabucat Productions, which had also posted the DeForest Kelley pitch reel for 333 Montgomery that we discussed with Larry Nemechek, and has also posted an almost but not quite complete copy of another Gene pilot produced at Screen Gems, APO 923, which we'll cover in a future edition of Gene-ology. According to the channel description, Sabucat Productions, owned by Jeff Joseph, was a premier stock footage house for over 20 years. Since then, we have been restoring and uploading moving images to YouTube that are either rare, nobody else has the footage, or far better quality than was previously available. Many of the videos are from Sabucat's film archive of acquired original physical reels. And this means, dear listeners, that if you visit the show notes at missionlogpodcast.com, you too can watch this pilot, the first Gene Roddenberry pilot that made it from the script to, well, somebody's screen, even if the public didn't see it. Because unless it shared the fate of 333 Montgomery and got absorbed into an as-yet undocumented Playhouse anthology, that video on YouTube is probably the first time since 1958 that anyone has seen Warrior, the story of Sam Houston. Ashley, let's meet the cast that we didn't know was cast.
So first up, we have Greg Palmer. Greg Palmer is our Sam Houston. He was born Palmer Edwin Lee in 1927 in San Francisco. He served as a cryptographer in the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II. After his service in the military, Greg became a stalwart of TV and film, starting with his first role as an uncredited ambulance driver in My Friend Irma Goes West in 1950. He had numerous guest appearances in Western staples of the day like Gunsmoke, The Wild Wild West, Rawhide, and Wagon Train. He is perhaps best known for his role as Tom McLaury in the final season of The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. This is Greg's first work with Gene Roddenberry, though he did guest on several shows that Gene worked on, like Jefferson Drum and Hotel de Paris. He would work with Gene again, guesting as Sheriff Matthew Tyler in Season 6, Episode 14 of Have Gun Will Travel, The Trial at Table Rock, as well as on the 23rd episode of Lieutenant, Tour of Duty as Private Carrie Booth. Palmer retired from acting in 1982, and we lost him in 2015.
As Deaf Smith, not Deaf Smith, we have Malcolm Atterbury. Now, Malcolm did not have to be an actor. He could have coasted along on The Family Fortune, seeing his dad was the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. You're probably more familiar with Malcolm as the deputy from Hitchcock's The Birds, or from movies like I Was a Teenage Werewolf, High School Big Shot, and Blood of Dracula. Basically, you might have seen him on Mystery Science Theater 3000. His movie and TV careers both started in 1954, so he found it easy to move back and forth between big screen and small screen. He was a veteran of the TV guest starring circuit in the likes of Hawaiian Eye, Have Gun Will Travel, Route 66, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Gunsmoke, and The Invaders. We lost Malcolm in 1992.
Next up, we have George Kimas as Tucky. George was another staple of the Western genre in the 1950s all the way through the 1970s. He had guest roles on many of the popular Westerns of the day, including The Virginian, Wagon Train, Rawhide, The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp, Zane Grey Theater, Cheyenne, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, and Zorro. Due to his leathery, pockmarked visage, he often played heavies and villains. He was also frequently cast in ethnic roles, particularly as Native Americans, due to his darker complexion, though George was actually of Greek descent. Aside from being a stalwart in Westerns, he also had numerous genre credits to his name, including Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Twilight Zone, $6 Million Man, and Night Gallery. And this would not be the only time George worked with Gene either. He would show up again in Gene's Have Gun Will Travel Season 6 episode, The Cage at McNabb. We lost George in 2008.
As Mr. Bearley, we have Dick Rich. Dick broke into films in the 1930s with many an uncredited role to his name, up until his name actually started appearing on the screen in the 40s. TV beckoned in the 50s with appearances in The Cisco Kid, The Adventures of Superman, Perry Mason, Hotel de Paris, Two Faces West, and quite a few appearances on Gunsmoke. His most high-visibility role may have been in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers in 1954. We lost Dick Rich in 1967.
Next, we have Ralph Moody as Uluteka. Ralph Moody's distinctive appearance got him cast as many a Native American character, but he was an old hand at showbiz, having made his name as Uncle Abner on the radio, working from WIBW in Topeka. He moved over to film in the early 40s, and in the late 40s began taking on TV roles as well, playing 3 different Indian chiefs on The Lone Ranger. Even on The Adventures of Superman, he wound up playing a Native American character. We have seen Ralph before. He was Jake Kelly in the Have Gun Will Travel episode, The Monster of Moon Ridge, and made 3 other appearances on that show alone. He also did guest shots on The Twilight Zone, The Rifleman, and Temple Houston, a show about the son of Sam Houston, which starred one Jeffrey Hunter. we lost Ralph Moody in 1971.
As General Jackson, right at the end of the show, we have Tom McKee making quite an impression. Tom McKee was another actor whose film and TV careers ran in parallel from the beginning, with early appearances in Dragnet, Space Patrol, 4 episodes of Ziv's Science Fiction Theater, I Led 3 Lives, and another Ziv science fiction show, World of Giants. Filling out the backgrounds of scenes on both the big and small screens, Tom McKee worked up until his death in 1960, with his last 2 TV appearances not being broadcast until after he died. Finally, we have the director of this whole endeavor, Franklin Adrian. Born in 1902, director Franklin Adrian was over 50 years old before he first stepped behind the camera for Commando Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe in 1953. Prior to that, he had been a producer or associate producer on many a serial, including Zombies of the Stratosphere. In many cases, such as the astoundingly titled Canadian Mounties vs. Atomic Invaders, he was both director and producer. Once again, his work led to TV, where he directed multiple episodes of The Adventures of Dr. Fu Manchu, Sugarfoot, Lassie, The Tall Men, and Sea Hunt. One of his final assignments was 1966's The Claw Monsters, on which he was also a producer. We lost Franklin Adrian in 1979. So, anyone who is expecting a recap, guess what? We did that heavy lifting a long time ago when we covered the script for Destiny and the Raven. There are some notable differences, though, and so we thought the time would better be spent covering that. So, what did you notice different between script and screen on this occasion?
Kind of the big things I noticed is that Sam doesn't find Osceola on the trail. He's part of the kidnapped group that he finds with Beerley. Further, Deef Smith intervenes when Tucky tries to kill Osceola before Sam even gets on the scene. So kind of the way it's played on screen is that Deef hangs back until Sam is like, hey, no, I'm not going to let you do that, blah, blah, blah. That was interesting. Kind of gave Deef a little more agency, I felt, and kind of showed a little more strength of character for him.
That scene is really interesting because there are like multiple layers of the pecking order being exposed there. Like Tucky gets to be the top of the food chain as far as the Native Americans because he's on Mr. Beerley's side. He is in Mr. Beerley's employ. Right. And you get the impression that Deef Smith is not well regarded by the other guys who are there. They definitely see him as of lesser importance than they themselves. Which, of course, makes it very easy for him to join up with Sam Houston when Sam appears.
Do you think they deem him as less important because they can tell that he's not really jiving with what they're doing, or because he is deaf?
You know, some people have a tendency to look for multiple ways to be horrible, and so at the risk of invoking the meme of, you know, the little girl saying, why not both? Why not both?
Yeah, because on screen, they seem to be pretty dismissive of him because, you know, they're doing their deal about to sell a couple of these indigenous folks as slaves. And they're like, oh, don't mind him. He's deaf.
Yeah, at the same time, his face is also showing his disdain for everything that's going on. Yeah. Malcolm Atterbury really nailed that. I think he was the first actor I really latched onto in this thing. Like, okay, this guy understands the assignment. It took me a bit longer to be on board with Greg Palmer as Sam Houston. I'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
Some minor differences. Most of the big differences are in the first act. The script said that it was 1816, but the pilot film opens with the legend, Indian Territory, Tennessee, 1818. Not sure why they moved it up 2 years, but there you go. In the script, Sam discovers the dead Seminole Indian on the trail, but in the finished film, he is jumped by a second Seminole whose purpose really seems to be to attack him with exposition.
All right.
Which it didn't suffer for that. It's just that I was looking at the script while I was watching the show for the first time, and I was like, oh wait, this is new. And that second Seminole character gets a really Klingon line of dialogue here. I would rather die at the hands of my blood enemy than to suffer dishonor.
That is a very Klingon line, right?
This is somebody, he's not worried about marching across Tennessee. He is trying to get into Sto-vo-kor.
The guy already marched from Florida to Tennessee, which that sounds utterly miserable to me.
The Trail of Tears is not called that for nothing.
That is true. That is true.
There are some new lines of dialogue in the first scene with Beerley and the enslaved Seminoles, and those added bits really seem to be there to make sure that no one is under the mistaken impression that they are supposed to be siding with Mr. Beerley.
Right.
Because Mr. Beerley is barely human.
Yeah.
Now, there are some casting issues with this. They're not new casting issues. We've discussed this stuff before with Have Gun Will Travel, with Boots and Saddles, and that is just painting up a bunch of white guys and saying they're Native Americans. In some cases, here especially, it really doesn't work. I was kind of surprised when Tucky showed up with a mohawk, because he just looks like a punk rocker. He does not look like a Native American. I'm sorry. Yes, right. I know where mohawks actually came from. But a lot of these actors playing these roles are painfully white.
Yeah, it was apparent that there were no actual Native folk cast in these roles at all, which is a shame. But that was also the practice.
Yeah,
that
was the time, and that doesn't excuse it. But
no, not
this
at all.
was hardly the only production suffering from that.
One other tiny detail thing I noticed is that when Sam meets up with his blood brother, in the script he is listed as Big Fox, and in the filmed version he's Little Fox. Nothing terribly different other than, just the adjective, but it was a thing that I noticed. I was like, what?
Well,
I don't know.
A pilot script can be aspirational, but then it butts heads with a TV budget. So this is as much Fox as we could afford.
Right. We can only afford Little Fox, not Big Fox.
Big Fox was booked.
Try again. Right, Big Fox, he's got this other gig.
I did like the actor playing Little Fox, though, because there was something about his performance that really made it clear, okay, me and Sam Houston go way back. I am in his corner. Right. And this was at a point in the show when I wasn't quite yet sold on the actor playing Sam Houston. So I found that reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was surprised to hear Norman and I talked about Deaf Smith back when we were covering the script. I hear he's pronounced Deef.
Right.
And it turns out that the pronunciation has changed over time. Really kind of the main inflection point when we went from deaf to deaf happened sometime in the 18th century. But the deaf pronunciation hung on longer than that in, shall we say, rural areas. And that would fit the time frame and the setting of 1818 in Tennessee that we have in this pilot film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing that was in the script that did not make it to film, and I was kind of crushed to find that this was the case, the whole scuffle over Sam Houston writing barely a receipt for the Seminoles. That got dropped from the film.
Yeah.
For those who listened back in podcast number 28, that was our whole reenacted scene. Was Sam Houston writing the receipt, just to establish dominance over Beerley. And I'm still a big fan of that scene, by the way. Really sad to see it go. We will always have the Gene-ology version of it.
That's actually pretty cool that it's immortalized in that way, since it didn't actually make it to film. So that's neat. One thing that I don't remember seeing in the filmed version, Earl, because Sam does reference that he's wounded, or he got wounded, which is why he is on detached duty. He's supposed to be the sub-agent working with Beerley, which is why he's going there in the first place. But in the script, Sam detours because he sees the moccasin prints of the Seminole. And he was going to spend time with his Cherokee family. And so he followed that. So I thought that was interesting. And then throughout the script, it's made reference to Sam's arm being in a sling. I don't remember his arm ever being in a sling.
Yeah, not on
in the show, right?
Film, which, there's probably some... I can see some studio executives saying, the hero of our piece can't have his arm in a sling. He's an action hero. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When we get to Uteca's village and get that establishing shot, that was where I really kind of realized, okay, we spent some money on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was kind of impressed by that. And then moments later was immediately depressed by the sheer number of ethnic stereotypes rolled out in just a few seconds when we transitioned to the nighttime sacrifice scene. Mm-hmm. We know Gene did his research because we read the series pitch in the script. Could be that the director or someone else making these calls wasn't quite so thorough and just fell back on, this is what we do. We got engines in the scene. This is what we do. We play this rhythm on the drums. We have, again, that it was the time. I did make a note of the fact that in the scene right before we go to the sacrifice, where Houston and Deep Smith are conferring in the tent, before Houston's going to go out and flip the script on everybody, that was the scene where I was really like, okay, now I'm starting to see Greg Palmer as Sam Houston. Before that, it's all daylight. And I was kind of thinking this guy needs to be less fresh-faced and more grizzled. Yeah, this is someone who has seen combat and has lived in the elements with his tribesmen. He's almost too clean-shaven and good-looking.
Yes, he's supposed to be pretty young here, like in the 20s. But he's seen some stuff. So
yeah, and just I don't know, something about Greg Palmer, how they his costume is very fresh at the beginning of the show. Like it just came out of the dry cleaners, and his hair's a little too perfect, and it's really in that nighttime scene, and he's reassuring Smith that I've got a plan to get us out of this, and you can finally see the wheels turning. That's when I finally started to buy him as Sam Houston, and he was winning me over with the performance. It was kind of hard to get past how he looked until they dropped the lighting, really.
Yeah.
I do need to make a note of this. The character of Osceola in the script is Osega in the film. I noticed this while I was watching the show, and then I saw it confirmed in the end credits. It is now Osega. Not crazy about that because it looks like a typo of Osage, which that's a whole different tribe.
Right.
But also because I was afraid that an early 90s video game commercial tagline was about to bust out of nowhere. Osega!
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I was thinking, oh, Sega. But that's because we are giant nerds.
But speaking of Osega's name, the scene where Houston and Osega trade names, that's really well done.
That was cool.
I really dug that scene because the level of tension was up there.
Yeah. I listened back to yours and Norman's coverage of Sam Houston this week as, prepping for this episode, because it'd been a while since I'd heard it before. I wanted to refresh my memory on what y'all had said. And Norman said that he was riveted, quote unquote, the entire time, like listening to your recap and reading this script. And I agree. That was definitely what I felt too watching it. The tension is played up really nicely. Greg does a really great job here. Him and Osega, the actor, Frank Dakova. Great job.
Yeah.
Both of these
and
guys.
Also, again, giving a shout out to Malcolm Atterbury. They occasionally cut away to Dave Smith kind of hanging back in the crowd with this look on his face like, dude, what are you doing? Another performance I really have to single out in this scene is Uluteka, because he figures out what Sam's doing. He jumps right into it, but he's playing it with a bit of a mixture of, I'm kind of pissed at Sam because he's outfoxed me within the rules, and I also know exactly what he's doing, and I am going along with it.
Right.
And I think Uluteka knows that if he doesn't immediately enter the scene and sanction what Sam is doing, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be bloodshed. Like, more bloodshed than he was already worried about going on. And when Sam is burying his knife in the ground, blade up, for the fight with Tucky, I will, as painfully white as the actor playing Tucky is, he does, there is one shot of him in that scene where he's watching Sam do that, and it looks like he is about to soil himself, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, and the leg wrestling scene was really tense as well.
Yeah, it was. I remember we were marveling at how tense that seemed in the script, and they pulled it off. And that's really, it's almost the centerpiece of the pilot film.
For sure.
Also, when we covered the script, we had not yet watched any Have Gun Will Travel. And while watching this, I suddenly realized that Uluteka's line, he speaks with straight tongue, that's the exact same turn of phrase Gene used in the Yuma Treasure, because Paladin had to, walk among the tribe and say, I speak straight.
The other big difference I spotted at the end of the script, Beerley and Reeves are told by General Jackson to leave instead of being arrested like they are, or Beerley is anyway. I don't remember Reeves. I don't think
Reeves is there, but Beerley did get arrested.
Yeah. Beerley got arrested at the end of the filmed version, which I'm like, good.
Jackson then offers Sam his job.
Right. Sam is offered the job as Indian agent by the end. So Jackson and Sam have a conversation like, you would have been a good Indian agent and now, but you're in so much hot water right now because when you've made me look like an idiot too, you really think these guys are going to come back? And then, it's too bad that you're going to be court-martialed for this nonsense. But then by the end, he offers him the job, which is good.
I really liked,
or to serve as detached duty.
Yeah, I really liked the General Jackson scenes. Tom McKee, for someone whose career really seems like it seldom ventured out of background player status, he really gave some weight to all that.
Yeah, he did.
He played it with just the right amount of indignation, and yet understanding that Houston did what he did to save not just his own skin, but a bunch of other people's lives as well, in all likelihood.
Right. Yeah, that was good. That was good. His scenes were few, but they were definitely memorable. and he performed admirably.
And right at the end, we have Greg Palmer break character and talk directly to any network executives watching this pilot film. Because, well, I should learn not to assume very much where this particular project is concerned, because just the fact that we're talking about it again is proof that I've already been surprised. To the best of my knowledge, unlike 333 Montgomery, this did not get broadcast by anyone. This was not grandfathered into an anthology show as an episode, which often happened with unsold pilots. That being said, it may have been, and it's just not documented. But so far as we know, the only people who set off eyes on this before Sabucat posted it on YouTube this year were network executives in 1958. And I really liked this pitch directly to them. A lot of it is quoted directly from Gene's series pitch, from his document. But Palmer gives it a very good, sincere delivery, and I would totally buy a TV series from this man.
Yeah. I thought his sales pitch for the show was great, talking about how this would be different than a lot of the Westerns that you would see of the day, but also like this is based on history, and Sam Houston had like this crazy larger than life experience. The things that you can draw from for this show were far more interesting and unique than most everything else on television. Like they really could have done something neat with this. And frankly, you know, I agree with your Norman's assessment from your earlier episodes. I don't understand how this didn't.
Oh, put a pin in that. I'm coming back to that before we are done today.
Should I grease up the wheels on the soapbox and roll it over?
Yeah, we've got wheels on it now, right?
Yeah. Because we keep passing it back and forth.
Cats were getting tired of lugging it around.
They're like, y'all do this yourselves.
Hello, Charlene Schmidt here. You might know me as the co-host of Mission Log Prodigy, but did you know that I also make handcrafted soap? I do! Head over to boldbubbles.com, where you'll see designs inspired by the Star Trek universe. Tempt your flesh with the hues of the Borg, or perhaps a plain, simple, unscented bar is more your style. We listen, we don't judge. As a Roddenberry Podcast listener, save 15% on your order with code Roddenberry at checkout. Live long and clean boldly with Bold Bubbles.
So, Ashley, I don't know if you remember this. You said you listened back to Norman and I talking about the Man from Texas material that we had on paper only. And we each discovered that those scripts related to our lives and places we had lived in surprisingly close to home ways, shall we say. They're talking about driving the Seminoles out of Florida. Norman went and checked. Oh, that was the part of Florida that he lives in now, you know, that is now developed. And then the second script, which so far as we know did not get filmed, but Sabucat, feel free to surprise me. The Exile script takes place in Fort Smith, Arkansas, literally my hometown. And I believe you have discovered that this also connects to you.
You know, we're going for the hat trick with this one. So I've mentioned it on the show, but I grew up in East Tennessee, specifically the small town of Maryville, Tennessee. It's spelled Maryville. No one says it that way. It's Merville or Maryville. Sam Houston grew up in my hometown. He spent his growing up years there after his father passed. His mother moved the family down from Virginia to Merville. And when he left to go live among the Cherokee at 16, did a little research on this yesterday. They lived on Hiwassee Island, which is driving is about an hour and a half to hour 45 minutes from Maryville, from where I grew up. Though I do not look it, I have a fair amount of Cherokee in my DNA. And I have no verification of this, but it's entirely possible that the descendants of the Cherokee people that lived in that area, which is where some of my extended family was, intermarried with my relatives, and their forebears may have lived with Sam Houston when he lived there. So that connection I thought was interesting, albeit a bit tenuous. Sam Houston was also educated after he left the Cherokee people and came back to Maryville. He was educated by the Reverend Isaac L. Anderson at Porter Academy. Porter Academy would eventually evolve into Porter Elementary School, which is where I attended school, kindergarten through 8th grade. Reverend Anderson founded Maryville College in 1819, which is where I got my undergrad degree. The historic schoolhouse where Sam Houston served as schoolmaster for a year from 1811 to 1812 still stands in my hometown, and you can go visit it. It is a historic landmark. It was restored painstakingly about 10 years ago, and it was like a 10-year process to do it. But it looks great. You can go visit it. It's not expensive to go visit, but it is a registered Tennessee historical landmark. There is also a elementary school in use in my hometown that is named for Sam Houston. So I found that so fascinating because I knew growing up, having like a cursory, just a very light cursory knowledge of Sam Houston, that, yeah, he has roots in my area. He became the governor of Tennessee, eventually moved to Texas. That was about the extent of my knowledge. So me doing research about him, just reading up, I had no idea that literally the town I lived in for 25 years was where he made his home for a good portion of his life and had roots there. So I just think that it is incredible that the three of us from very different locations all still had this like hometown connection in different ways to Sam Houston.
I think that is a testament to, you know, you described it as larger than life, just how big this guy's life was, how far his reach was through history, that he touched all of these places.
Right.
I don't have anything to top that. You were telling me about it before the show, and I thought it was too interesting to not bring up.
Yeah, it was just wild to have that deep of a connection, you know, to somebody that we're talking about here in Gene-ology that, you know, Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry seemed to connect with and write about. I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah. And, you know, going back to Gene's original pitch document, you could have gotten hundreds of episodes out of this guy's real life, which is something that Greg Palmer echoes in that sales pitch. I don't really have anything deep to discuss that we didn't already hit in the scripts, other than that having seen it now, having discovered it was filmed and having gotten to see it, Gene should have been and probably was very proud of his first pilot.
Yeah, and as he should be.
Yeah, kind of going back to our discussion with Dr. Trek himself, Larry Nemeczek, you can view the world of film collectors and traders as a legal gray area, or as vital preservation of material that does indeed have historical importance. And I feel like now that this has been uncovered, this does have huge historical significance for the career of Gene Roddenberry. Because this is really one of the big four. First, we have Gene's first produced piece of TV, which was Mr. District Attorney. It was the Defense Plant Gambling episode, episode 1 of this podcast. Since Gene is best known for his sci-fi work later, number 2 of the big 4 is Secret Defense or Secret Weapon of 117, his first produced science fiction script. Number 3 on the big 4, first produced pilot. Well, that's this. And then I think number 4 of the first series, which we discovered was not the first series that we thought it was going in. Which, that of course was Wrangler, whether Gene wanted to admit it or not. By the way, on the Sabucat YouTube channel, this is labeled The Man from Texas. It is not labeled Warrior, the Story of Sam Houston. The thumbnail says that. But the text says The Man from Texas. So, Sabucat, we know you're listening. Thanks for joining us. Let us know what else you've got, buddy, because this was great.
Yeah, dude. Seriously, would love to hear more about what you're doing. Earl, you and I are both big fans of dead media and finding lost things, and looking at film history outside of even just Gene Roddenberry's work, like what we do here for Gene-ology, and the act of preservation, I think, is so important. And so I think what Sabucat is doing is phenomenal. So, well done, friend. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for finding this.
Yes.
Gosh.
Lost media. I mean, lost anything. Hell, I'd be happy if I found 50 cents in the couch.
Is this a wrap on Sam Houston?
Until the next thing pops up. I mean, we thought we had wrapped Sam Houston ages ago. And here we are talking about it again because, they did film it, and it's actually good. For 1958, it's really, really good.
It's really good, and props to Sabucat, because the restoration on that looks phenomenal. It's very clean.
Smooth as glass.
Looks
very well
great.
done.
Earl, it occurred to me when we did supplemental episode a while back. I think it was like a mailbag episode. Somebody asked us, of the things we only have scripts for, what's the thing that you would really like to see? And I said, well, I know it didn't get made, but I would have loved to have seen the Sam Houston script. I'm not someone who believes in manifesting, but hello. That is a thing that happened. So I'm really glad that we got to see this. And we have sung the praises of Sabucat many times today, but I will do it once more. Thank you, Sabucat, for sharing this with the world. This is a great find and a real awesome piece of film architecture, if you will, because this is something that we did not think got made, because we only had the scripts to work from, and those aren't publicly available either.
The best kind of surprise. Yeah, I am not worried or the least bit insecure about being proven wrong. It's like, keep hitting us with it, buddy.
I have a weird thing, because I'm kind of a perfectionist with the work I do, and I try to do the best I can. If I think I could have done better, it bothers me. One of the things that people are always kind of surprised is because I'm also kind of stubborn and opinionated. If I'm wrong about something, I would love to hear about it, because I love being right so much and getting things right that I'm open to correction, because then I get to be more right, which confuses people, and that's fine. I confuse people.
And we're digging through the archives in one place, but that has led to digging through archives in other places as well. And so, as you're going to hear in our next show, other stuff has turned up that we had previously, unfortunately, put on the skip list because we just didn't think we had it. We didn't have a script. We didn't have anything. Turns out it's out there. So this is the beginning of a process. We're really... This is the point where the show starts to benefit from some of the digging that we've done. And I don't know if this podcast actually in any way inspired some of these other things to resurface on Sabucat's channel or anywhere else. But if so, that would be humbling, frankly, honestly.
And humbling, but also encouraging, As
far as morals, messages, and meanings, I think it's the same message that Norman and I came away with when we covered the script. But at the risk of sinking any kind of career I might be trying to make out of being a professional TV history podcaster, one message I can come away with is network executives are absolute idiots. How did this not sell?
Beats me. It beats me because the potential to do something that would have been so different from every other Western on TV, which, at that point, this is what, 1958? 57? Like, so many Westerns. Like, there's a glut of Westerns. What can you do to differentiate yourself? Well, here's one actually based on history by a guy who was, quite literally larger than life and lived this far and away, exciting life that I don't know that he set out to be exciting or different. It feels like this is him just pursuing what was in front of him and looking for something bigger and better. I found that really fascinating. I think that's portrayed well in what you see in this filmed pilot and in the script that we have. I don't get why this didn't get picked up unless it was too different or too bold.
The thing was, you could have sold it as educational because Sam Houston was a real historical figure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Make it family viewing hour.
I still don't see how this went no further.
I think one of the things that Norman speculated, and I think we see it in this filmed pilot, is the observation is made that Sam is a man with the head of a white man and the heart of an Indian. And Sam actually says to General Jackson, my views on the Cherokee do not always align with the government's
I noticed
views.
that line, and I believe something that we may have said either in our coverage of the Man from Texas material in the archive or perhaps later was that you can take these things that Gene wrote about either Sam Houston or Paladin being a friend to displaced Native Americans as kind of a civil rights by proxy message. Like, we're not just talking about Native Americans here. We are talking about any displaced or disadvantaged people. All you white folks in 1950s and 60s. Pay attention.
Right.
It could be that was too far ahead for the networks to be comfortable with, in which case, shame on them. Because couching it in these historical terms would have been a way to sneak that in, if that was what they were concerned with. But it also could have started some real and necessary conversations.
Yeah.
Who knows how the world could have changed because of it.
Gene-ology is meant to be entertaining and informative, but it's also just the beginning of an ongoing conversation about the works of Gene Roddenberry. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Facebook at MissionLogPod. And please remember, your comments could be used on future installments of Gene-ology. If you have any material that might be of interest to us that isn't already in the Roddenberry archive, drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and Mission Log Gene-ology is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment.
On the next Gene-ology, Bullet Wound. Special thanks to consulting producers Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Rand Hurl, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi.
We'll be back next week with more of your favorite programs. This concludes our broadcast day.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.